Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Javon Harrington, back to hit you with another video. And today we are going to be continuing What If Deku Was Iron Man? My Hero Academia Armored Adventures, Part 5. But first, as always, if you're a fan of today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcasting stats to come out now and in the future. I do want to make a brief announcement, and that is that I do want to apologize for not putting out a video on Sunday. Normally on Sunday afternoons we do What If Sasuke Uchiha Was a Girl, and we're currently doing the Boruto Naruto Yokai series. However, I do want to apologize for not getting a video out yesterday on Sunday. That being that I really just did not feel all that good yesterday. Not that I was sick necessarily, but honestly I had just been running around doing so much that afternoon that by the time I got home, just really didn't have it in me to record or make a video. So I know that some of you guys were probably waiting for a video yesterday. It didn't come out. I do apologize. We are still going to be doing it on Thursdays, but I am going to be debating if I'm going to do Sunday afternoons as well. Simply because, you know, a lot of times things might come up. I have other stuff that I do during the weekends. Personal things, you know, and when you're trying to help other people and things of that nature, you know, sometimes you just get a little too tired. But I do want to try to keep that schedule consistent, you know, do the videos on Sunday afternoons. But every now and again, you know, if I'm feeling a little too tired, a video might not come out. But I will try to leave a comment in the comment section or in the community tab so that you guys can be made aware in case something like that comes up again. So again, apologies for not getting a video out yesterday, but thank you all for your understanding. Also, the Q&A video will be out later on tonight, so stay tuned for that as well. The 2K Q&A special, just a little something to show my appreciation to you guys for getting our channel up to 2K. Thank you all once again, as we are on the road now to 3K and beyond. So we begin the process of getting to 3K. And like I've stated before, I want to get to 3K by the end of the year if possible. 3K or more. If I could somehow pull off 4K, that would be awesome. But I think at the process of which my channel grows, I don't think that's realistic. But I do think that realistically 3K or more is something that's definitely doable. So that's what we're going to be trying to get to moving forward. So I do appreciate all of your support with that as well. But anyway, without further ado, we are going to be continuing our video today. What If Deku Was Iron Man? My Hero Academia Armored Adventures Part 5. So, as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. 2 days after the sports festival, Izuku and the other students of Class 1A would return back to school, having gotten a chance to recover, as well as a chance to prepare for the next stage in their learning. As they made their way to class, Izuku would ask Ida if he was alright. Many had become aware of what had happened to his brother, that he had sadly become yet another victim to the hero killer and was in critical condition. Although Ida would put on a smile and assure Izuku that everything was fine, Izuku could tell otherwise, but chose to keep it to himself. As all the students gathered together, Mr. Aizawa would announce that they were getting a new transfer student. the boy would stand before them in a UA uniform. His name was T'Challa, from the country of Wakanda, a nation in Africa. They were known for being highly advanced. By this point in Wakanda's history, in this version of events, they were known for many of the technological advances they had made in society. But not all of their secrets were revealed to the world. There were some things that just had to be kept close to home. But still, while it was a bit unorthodox to receive a transfer student, all the same, this recommendation could not go ignored. T'Challa introduced himself to everyone. They were surprised and they asked what his quirk was. He simply called it Electric Cat, demonstrating his ability. He gave off electric bolts all around him, but they could also see that he was rather muscular. He remarked that he had primal ability, that he had the senses and the attributes of a feline, so to speak. Everyone wasn't fully sure what his quirk was, and he didn't elaborate any further as he took his seat, sitting next to Izuku as he smiled. He noticed the ring on Izuku's finger, and while Izuku didn't take note of it at the time, T'Challa had one as well. After the sports festival, Mr. Aizawa would announce that they were going to be doing a work studies for 1 week, at which point they were going to be shadowing under a pro hero and agency to learn more about them and what they do. They were also going to be picking out their own hero names with Midnight, so as to introduce themselves properly. After giving it much thought, many of the students would pick names for themselves. Momo would pick the name Miss Molecule. Todoroki would pick his own name in Shoto. Bakugo's name, King Explosion Murder, would be turned down. Shang would decide to go with his own name, but adding Chi at the end, becoming Shang-Chi, the martial arts hero. Ida would struggle with his own name, and he would decide to come back to it later. And as for Izuku, he picked the name that Momo had given him long ago. While technically his suit was not made out of iron, it just made the most sense. And he called himself Iron Man, the invincible hero. After school, while many students were picking for their own work studies programs, Izuku, Bakugo, Shang-Chi, Kirishima, and Todoroki would be called into All Might's office. The 5 boys, who knew of his secret ever since the USJ attack, they would arrive inside and see Momo already sitting there with All Might. As they gathered together, All Might would explain to Momo his secret, filling her in on what One for All truly was. But more than that, he also wanted to make her his successor to the quirk. Momo would be shocked by this. While she was honored to be acknowledged, she didn't think she was worthy. Surely there was someone who could be better than her to take the position. She looked at Todoroki. She also looked to even Izuku and Bakugo, even Kirishima and Shang-Chi. They were all amazing and talented heroes in their own right. They performed so much better in the sports festival than her. However, the 5 boys all spoke up and explained that they had turned down the offer for their own reason. In the end, they believed that it wasn't the path for them, but they could recognize that she had the skills to be a great successor to All Might, someone they believed was just as worthy and just as true. They noted that she had amazing talent, and that she could go so much further. She just needed to have faith in herself. Izuku, resting his hand on her shoulder, assured her that she would be supported no matter what, and they promised to back her up. as she looked it over and thought about it. She would feel a lot more courageous, and she would accept the offer. There would be a bit of a lighthearted moment, as the 5 boys laughed now that she had accepted the power. She had to eat a strand of All Might's hair in order to take it. Easily safe to say this was not one of her best moments. But still, all the same, Izuku was happy for her. Before long, the work studies program would begin, and many of the students would go to a respective hero agency. Todoroki would go with his father, Endeavor. Bakugo was picked up by Best Jeanist. Momo, under the request of All Might, would train under Gran Torino, his sensei, to help her get a better control of One for All. Shang-Chi, along with the new student T'Challa, would both go under the hero agency of Mirko. Shang being surprised that T'Challa would follow him to the same agency. But what was even more surprising was when the two of them were alone, and T'Challa whispered something in Shang's ear. Something he was not expecting at all. And as for Izuku, he decided to work under Power Loader, back at the school. However, before Izuku's work studies began, there was the care of his mother. Ever since they had come into their wealth, following the death of Izuku's father, his mother never wanted or needed for anything. In fact, she was encouraged to retire from her job and to live a peaceful and more comfortable life. While she wasn't fully on board with it at first, after a while she got used to it, and she had her own little hobbies to keep herself busy. The real reason behind this was actually at the request of Izuku's late father. Jarvis, who had served Izuku's father before his passing, explained that to keep his family safe, they needed to be kept out of the public eye as much as possible. In doing so, it would be best if they were able to be safely cared for but secluded. Not completely, but at least to the extent where they wouldn't draw any unnecessary attention, not knowing if any of the other enemies of his would be out there. Jarvis took to this role seriously. As such, he would look after the family, and Inko would just focus on raising her son. Now that some time had passed though, Izuku had grown into his own hero and was more than capable of taking care of himself. As such, Inko got out more. She was still good friends with Bakugo's mother, the two having known each other as they had raised their young children when they were little. And as such, Bakugo's mother, who was a world-renowned model, would invite Inko with her to go on various trips. One in particular was for a 2-week vacation in Paris. Inko wasn't sure if she wanted to go, but Izuku would encourage her to go immediately, since he was going to be doing work studies anyway, and he could take care of himself till they got back. Inko looked at her son a bit worriedly. Now, granted, she was a bit worried about her son being involved in hero business, especially since he didn't have a quirk. But from what she saw at the sports festival, the way that he was able to build his own suits of armor and hold his own against some of the brightest that UA had to offer, it only had her faith growing in him even more and more. But still, as a loving and worrying mother, she couldn't just say that she didn't have any concerns whenever Izuku went out. Of course, Izuku was very smart for a boy his age, showing wisdom beyond his years. He helped the family make various investments with their wealth, not only allowing it to remain high, but to grow. Izuku doing this so that he could continue to fund his heroism and not tank the family's entire financial system completely, since that would be selfish. Even for a young age, Izuku had many new patents, many new inventions, and other ideas that were starting to take shape in the world. It was nothing major yet, but Izuku knew that one day he'd want to grow his own company. He wasn't sure entirely of what it would be based around, but perhaps helping with various heroes, and those who aspired to be heroes but didn't have the quirk to do so. Of course, all of this would soon be revolutionary, his technology being that alone, as there were many who were interested in Izuku's suit of armor, many of whom would like to see what it was capable of. There were even murmurs that Izuku could be getting offers from Eye Island soon, assuming that he continued with his escapades, as even various world governments would have to acknowledge Izuku's presence. If the young boy's armor continued to grow and get stronger and stronger, he might build armor, or potentially have inventions capable of rivaling some of the best heroes and the best villains. Of course, it was for selfish reason, but still, as Izuku continued to grow in the hero world, so too did his presence among those of good and of evil. But for now, the best thing that Izuku could do was focus on his heroics, and giving his mother a chance to enjoy herself and to not worry was the best thing that he could do for her. After some heavy convincing, she would go on the trip, and Jarvis would accompany them. As they left, Izuku seeing them off at the airport, Jarvis promised to keep a close eye on both of them, and he would warn Izuku to take care of himself while they were gone. And with that, the two mothers, along with Jarvis, would fly off for their Paris vacation, leaving Izuku alone to his own devices. Before long, the work studies program would begin. Izuku would go to the school's mechanics lab, where he would meet with the hero power loader, along with Mei Hatsume, his assistant, and Izuku's other classmate, in the support course program. Izuku would show them a few of the schematics that he had for his armors. He didn't reveal everything, as there were some things he wanted to keep secret, but still, for what he gave them, it was more than enough. They would look through his various designs. As Izuku explained, he was working on a new armor, one that would help after a few of the last battles that he had had that were rather intense. He first noted about his fight with Shigaraki, how one of his armors had their chest plate completely decayed, and he even showed the scar on his chest. He had to get 3 skin grafts just to repair the damage that had been done, and even then, there was still a little pain from time to time. He knew that that was one quirk he had to be prepared for. And then, at the sports festival, his fight against Todoroki showed that his suit needed to do a better job resisting extreme temperatures of heat and of ice. These were his 2 main focuses, as he was going to get help working on his next armor. After brainstorming for a bit, Mei would come up with an idea, but before telling it, she wanted something in exchange. If she was going to help Izuku with his suit of armor and future inventions, she wanted help with some of hers as well, to build better support items. Izuku would agree, and they would get to work immediately. Mei would suggest using a mixture of a biodegradable material, one of which wouldn't suffer from immediate decay, or at least one that wouldn't be as rapid as his regular titanium alloy. A mixture, well balanced, could create one strong enough to resist decay to a certain extent. Nothing in this world was truly everlasting, but some things took a longer time to decay than others. On top of that, they also worked on fixing the resistance to extreme temperature, Izuku's suit being built with a special thermal pack that ran all throughout the suit's interior, one that could resist high heat and extreme cold. On top of that, Izuku would also look to Mei Hatsume's other inventions, that being her light exoskeleton-like alloy that could wrap around one's body rather quickly, and one that could be compressed into something that wasn't so heavy but carryable. After looking it over, he thought a backpack would be essential for this. After going over it, they would come up with what would be known as the Model Black and Gold Series armor. This armor being especially made to counteract against decay, along against extreme temperatures, as well as being light enough and compactable enough for Izuku to carry with him on a daily basis. Izuku's backpack armor would essentially be able to deploy from anywhere, allowing Izuku quick mobility. This was his newest project, and the two of them would get to work at once with assistance from Power Loader. Izuku would make some overnight calls, and the supplies would be delivered discreetly to UA, allowing them to get to work. They would work at it tirelessly, day in and day out, but before long, they would make progress. Meanwhile, Momo would train with Gran Torino to get a mastery over a quirk of One for All that now merged with her creation quirk, enhancing it. For Momo, her years of studying various objects and devices to use for a creation quirk had now evolved. Her mind was now able to think a lot faster and a lot more clearly, and her quirk itself had evolved along with the power, giving her new various features. First, she had an ability that you could say is similar to the one used by Generator Rex. This was known as Creation Advance. Essentially, Momo's creations would be advanced to the point where she could create nanite-like constructs from her body, similar to the ones used by Generator Rex. The second would be Creation Maximum. Essentially, her regular creation quirk, except when enhanced with One for All, will allow her to create the strongest of materials. Meaning that while Momo Yaoyorozu could create something like a metal bow staff, if she created a metal bow staff now, it would probably be one of the strongest metal bow staffs that you could ever find, assuming that it wasn't any other type of raw metal in the world, like one in particular found in a certain country in Africa. And then finally, her own version of full cowling that she would call the Overdrive. Basically the same principles as the full cowling, just with a different name and with a different mastery in percentage. Momo had been training with her quirk from a young age and always made sure to keep herself fit. While she didn't undergo the extreme trainings like Izuku did to maintain One for All, her body was in a more than well enough state to take on the quirk, and she could use it to a degree, at around 4 to 5%, and that was just putting it mildly. However, Momo's main problem was that she tried to use all of her powers at once, which oftentimes led to disastrous situations with Gran Torino. As one time, while they were training, Momo tried to use an advanced creation, building a metal-like fist, similar to the ones used by Generator Rex. She then tried to create a sword that she could hold, and then she tried to use Overdrive 3%. However, her mind didn't process everything correctly, and when she tried to use it all at once, she accidentally ended up creating a whole bunch of different devices and contraptions that ended up protruding from all over her arms and legs, and Gran Torino had to work to basically dig her out of her own mechanical devices. He warned that she couldn't do everything at once, and that for now, she had to focus on learning to use her new skills one at a time, and slowly she could integrate and combine them together. As such, they would take things from the beginning, and Momo would focus on using what she could and what she couldn't do for now. As for Ida, he had taken to working with the hero Manuel in Hosu City. Of course, while the hero was grateful that someone from the Ida family would actually want to work under his agency, he was able to realize that he had come here after what happened to his brother. And while he understood what he was going through, he warned him not to do anything reckless like try to find the hero killer. The hero killer Stain, who had been more than busy for his own part, having recently left a meeting with Shigaraki and Kirigiri of the League of Villains. They had offered him membership, but he refused, as their ideals didn't align with his. They merely wanted destruction and chaos for its own sake. However, he was not of that volition. His destruction came for a reason, and he did what he did for his own justifiable cause. He did not believe in killing all heroes, just the false ones, the ones who did not stand up to the ideals that he lived in his own image of. In his mind, if you did not hold to the same standard as the one All Might, then you truly were a false hero, deserving of only death. After about 4 days' time, Momo, who was getting a bit used to her newfound abilities, would go out on patrol with Gran Torino. As they made their way on a subway train to Hosu City, she would give a call to Izuku, as she wanted to see how he was doing. Izuku would hold his phone to his ear while he was finishing up some touches on the new armor, the Black and Gold series. He explained to her what he had been up to, but at the mention of Mei Hatsume, Momo turned a bit sour to him. She just didn't like him hanging around that girl so much all alone. The girl that was always obsessed with touching and feeling on everything Izuku had and did. Sometimes the feelings got a little too close. And then there was that incident where she blew up in the lab and she landed on Izuku. A lot of her landed on Izuku. And the more Momo thought about it, the more she could feel One For All starting to swell up inside of her, and she quickly had to calm herself down, lest she lose her composure and accidentally blow up the train. Izuku, being none the wiser, would assure her that everything was fine, although he did have one concern. He had been trying to text Ida to check in on him and ask if he was alright, but he hadn't said anything. He had also spoken to Shang-Chi, and while Shang was answering him sometimes, Shang would tell Izuku that there was a lot they needed to talk about and soon. As they were continuing their conversation on the phone, Izuku starting to note that the last time the hero killer was sighted was in Hosu City, and that his worst fears was that Ida had actually gone there to find him. The train would suddenly come under attack, both Momo and Gran Torino helping to keep the passengers safe, as a flying Nomu had crashed in and was making a muck, Gran Torino kicking him out quickly as they went fighting down into the city below. He warned Momo to stay back, but as she looked outside of the damaged cart, all she could see was destruction, as Hosu City was under attack. She would immediately tell Izuku what was going on, and Izuku knew that he needed to go and be there for her. He would tell her, if possible, to see if she could get a hold of Ida, and that he would join her as quickly as he could. Izuku then left the lab, trying to find Power Lawyer and to tell him of the situation at hand, but Power Lawyer had gone out for the evening and wouldn't be back for a while, so it was just he and Mei. He would look to Mei, expecting her to want to stop him from leaving. However, she was excited. Of course, she knew that it was technically against the law for Izuku to get involved, but as long as he kept his suit on and kept his face covered, then they could always say that it was just a robot, an AI, a prototype gone horribly wrong. Of course, Izuku wasn't really fond of telling that many lies, but in the end of the day, Mei wanted to see their work out and in the battlefield. As such, Izuku would place the backpack on his shoulders. After activating the sequence, the black and gold armor would form around him quickly as he made his way outside. Wearing the power ring, Izuku will allow his suit to draw on the power of the ring itself, supercharging it and allowing him to fly quickly to Hosu. He sent out a quick text to anyone, telling them of a nearby location in Hosu, hoping that if anyone would receive the message, that they would get there fast. Izuku focused on what he would have to run into in the meantime, as he made his way. There would be some who would get the message, and since they were not too far off, they would go and lend Izuku a hand. Todoroki would be on his way, along with Shang-Chi, as Miriko wanted to assist with the heroes in Hosu. She decided to bring T'Challa and Shang-Chi along. However, when she realized that the two of them had somewhere that they had wanted to go, she simply told them don't get caught, as she bounced off high into the sky, battling with various Nomu. And with that, the two heroes would go speeding off at once. Meanwhile, deep within a dark alleyway, the hero killer, with blades of ice, stands prone over Ida, who lied on the ground unable to move. He was originally going to kill the hero native when this boy arrived to stop him. He wasn't prone to killing children. He really didn't want to. But when the boy showed no true heroic ideals, that his only reason for being there was for petty and stupid revenge, well, now he couldn't let this fake hero, no matter how young, get away. No, it was time for him to die as well. He had already run his sword into his shoulder blade, making it hard for him to move as he lay on the ground motionless. Stain raised his blade above his head, noting that there would be no more false heroes. When suddenly, a cannon would be heard ringing through the alley, hitting him square in the chest and sending him back flying. Ida wondered what had happened and just where that shot had come from, when standing before him would be Momo. She had this strange large contraption attached to her that suddenly dematerialized and disappeared. As she readied herself, creating a metallic-like shield as well as a power sword, she would tell Ida that things were going to be alright, and that his friends were coming to help him. Ida would try to warn Momo to get away, that this wasn't her fight, and that she didn't need to get involved. However, Momo would tell Ida that as a member of Class 1A, and as a friend, she would not abandon someone in need, for that was truly not what a hero did. Upon hearing these words, Stain would like what he heard from her. He liked her attitude. She was truly one worthy of being a hero, and he did not wish to kill her. However, he did warn that the others were going to have to die, and he would stop her if necessary. Momo would begin her battle with Stain. Stain would not only use his various swords and blades, but he seemed to be able to conjure up ice tendrils or other forms of bladed ice that were sent rocketing towards her, as she had to create multiple shields to block and keep herself safe. However, at the moment she had let her guard down, an icicle had cut her in the cheek, and Stain grabbed it and licked the blood. She immediately fell to the ground and felt as though she couldn't move at all. She realized that he was using the blood, that somehow licking the blood was what was able to stop ones from moving. She questioned how this was effective, as she had noticed Ida was starting to move once again. She asked him his blood type, and his blood type was A, the same as hers, and the two of them seemed to be moving the slowest. She also pondered if whether or not different blood types had different time limits, gaining valuable information, although there was nothing that she could do since she was a bit immobile for now, as Stain was preparing his next charge to kill Ida once and for all. Though before he would even get the chance to, there would be a flash of fire and of lightning that would kick back at Stain once again. Now joined was Shang-Chi, along with a new hero, one who introduced himself as the Black Panther. Momo asked what was going on and who the new hero was. The boy turned and revealed that he was T'Challa, but that now wasn't the time for questions, and that now was simply the time for action. As the two boys turned, with Momo still recovering along with Ida, Momo would give them the information that she had, and the two nodded in agreement as they came back to face against Stain. They noted the ring that he had on his finger, and they were instantly able to tell what it was. One of the 10 Makuan rings, the Ring of Ice. Both Shang-Chi and Black Panther together would note that they needed to get the ring off of him as soon as possible. But that was going to be a bit difficult, as he would create multiple blades of ice along with his regular swords. Black Panther would get a chance to unveil his ability. His suit was more than durable enough to take the blades that were being thrown at him, and the more that they attacked, the more the outlines of his suit began to glow a bright violet color. Once he felt he had stored up enough energy, as Stain went for another attack, he would disperse the kinetic energy he had stored up in his suit all at once, knocking Stain back a great distance, while Shang attempted to take him out once more, the two of them colliding with one another, Shang using his bow staff to counter against Stain and his various forms of ice. Shang would also use the power of the fire ring to melt and match against the power of the ice ring as well, the two being a good enough counter for one another. Instantly, Izuku, along with Todoroki, would then enter into the alleyway also. Stain saw that he was outnumbered, but the young heroes were not going to let him get away so easily. With Momo and Ida now back on their feet, the 6 young heroes would do battle against the hero killer Stain. Izuku would be brought up to speed from Shang-Chi on what was going on, as he told that Stain actually had one of the rings also. Izuku would be shocked by this news. The last thing he expected was that the hero killer would have one of the 10 Makuan rings. How on earth had he even gotten one in the first place? From what he had learned from Shang, the hero killer had no ties to the Mandarin or to the 10 Shadows organization, so there was no reason for him to even have one, unless he had come across it by chance. All the same, they were all warned about his blood quirk, and they had to make sure to keep on their guard at all times. Once they had managed to get him surrounded, they would hit him with a flurry of attacks, with ultimately Izuku taking him down with the final strike to the face. As they had knocked him out cold, Izuku quickly went and retrieved the ring from his finger, Momo being one of the few that actually noticed what he was doing, and wondered why he had done it. All seemed well for the young heroes. They noted that Ida was in the most of damage of all of them, along with the other hero native. They knew that they needed to get them medical attention as soon as possible, and they were preparing to leave and make their way out of the alley when they were stopped at the entranceway, as two new beings had arrived. One, a man that seemed to be made out of stone, with blue gloves, blue boots, and a blue cape. And the other one seemed to be as though he were glowing energy itself. Shang knew who they were, as he had read up about them from various villain wanted pages. But still, to think that they had shown up here of all time, it could only mean one thing. They were the Grey Gargoyle and the Living Laser, two wanted villains from the United States. The Grey Gargoyle, quirk, Stone Touch. With his gloves not being covered, his quirk allowed him to turn those whom he touched into stone, and they would remain that way for 1 hour. However, when he touched himself and turned himself into stone, he would use his specially made gloves to help not turn himself back into human by accident, although he could turn back into his human state if he were rendered unconscious. And then there was also the Living Laser, quirk, Natural Energy. The Living Laser was able to essentially turn his whole body into a body made of pure energy in and of itself. He could also absorb it and allow himself to grow in power, although he was weak and prone to water or water-based abilities. The two having arrived, they saw that Shang-Chi was here, thus proving their calculations correct. They noted who they had come for, and that if he came over willingly, along with his ring, no one else would need to get hurt. However, the students all stood together. They were not going to allow one of their own to be taken, and the villains, thinking that they were just fighting a bunch of kids, decided that now was as good a time as any to get started, and the battle would come underway. The students would have to work together to face off against the two villains, each side splitting up to create a 3-on-1 scenario on two fronts. The Grey Gargoyle would try to go after the weakest of them first. However, he would quickly be stopped by Shang-Chi, who would create a great wall of fire along with Todoroki, sending him back, while Izuku, using his Iron Man armor, would engage with the Living Laser, as he was the best equipped to take him out. Momo would go to back up Izuku, along with Black Panther, while Shang-Chi, along with Ida as well as Todoroki, would focus their attentions on the Grey Gargoyle. The battles would be taking place on both fronts, and the children would quickly see what true high-ranking villains were capable of doing. Todoroki, who had already been a bit tired from his battle with Stain, ended up letting his guard down at the last moment. He had been touched by the Grey Gargoyle, and he began to turn into stone. Seeing this, Shang-Chi would quickly move to defend his friend. However, seeing as though he was the one they were after, Ida would move quickly behind the Grey Gargoyle. As he used his reciprocal burst one more time, he kicked him as hard as he could in the back of the head, only to have injured his own leg in the process, seeing as how the head that he had kicked was as hard as stone. But still, it did some damage, ringing his head just long enough for Shang to deliver a flurry of offensive maneuvers, attacking him to the point that he had seemingly knocked him out. However, while damaged, the Grey Gargoyle would still stand on his feet once more. In the meantime, Izuku and the others would have to focus their attentions on trying to keep the living laser from absorbing too much energy, as it seemed as though the more he took from around the surrounding area, the more powerful he got. Although, thanks to Izuku's new enhancements from his suit, as he engaged with the living embodiment of pure energy, his suit did not overheat from the close proximity, and he was able to grapple with and hold him to a certain degree as they engaged in a close range battle. Though still, the living laser had the upper hand, as he had absorbed much more energy into himself, and as such, he only continued to grow stronger and stronger as time went on. Before long, though, the others weren't sure of what they could do, if they could have any chance against him at all. That was until Izuku saw a fire hydrant not too far away. Izuku remarked that he was going to use everything within himself to hold the living laser for as long as he could, as he noted for T'Challa and Momo to get into position. Momo would create a device that would connect to the fire hydrant, while T'Challa would hold the device connected to her, channeling his electric power into it. On their marks, Izuku would manage to get behind the living laser, the living being attempting to overheat Izuku by giving off an irradiated form of energy. While barely able to hang on, Izuku would hold the living laser in a full Nelson-like position, keeping him in place long enough, while Momo would concentrate a high-pressurized form of water, channeled with electrical energy. When blasted at the living laser, while it would power him up, the water would also short-circuit him at the same time. In doing so, they would essentially be able to extinguish his power all at once, to the point where he was rendered basically powerless, and Izuku would be able to take him out. While the battle had been won, Shang-Chi was still struggling to take down the Grey Gargoyle. Although, it wouldn't last for too much longer, as from out of nowhere, in a bright flurry of fire, Endeavor would arrive, and in one attack, the Grey Gargoyle would be knocked out. In doing so, Todoroki would turn from his stone-like state back to normal. The other pro-heroes would arrive and admonish the children for having gotten involved, but still, they would be shocked at the results, seeing as how they had managed to take down 2 international criminals, although with assistance from Endeavor, as well as the hero killer, Stain. As they went to go round up the villains and haul them into custody, from out of nowhere, a flying Nomu would jump up and grab a rather tired Momo, even faster than Izuku could have realized. However, before he could fly off to save her, Stain, from out of nowhere, while still tied up, would jump into the air and lick the blood of the Nomu, causing it to fall to the ground before killing it. As it freed Momo from its clutches, Stain would stand above the Nomu, as he looked back with murderous intent in the eyes of all of the heroes. He declared that this was not where he was going to meet his end, that if there was anyone who was going to kill him, it would only be a hero truly worthy of that title. Only All Might had the right to finish him off. As he gave his hateful impact speech, one so powerful that even a pro like Endeavor was shook, he would then pass out just as quickly. Falling to the ground, he would quickly be put into custody and taken away. In the meantime, the children would be taken to the hospital. Ida was the one who needed most time for recovery, and everyone else would have their wounds tended to. Once again, the pro-heroes would reprimand the children for having gotten involved, especially without a hero license. Even the chief of police, while grateful for their help, would have to give the credit for taking down the villains to a hero endeavor, since that was the only way to make it justifiable, as he thought they all had bright careers ahead of them, and he didn't want them to be ruined with them potentially getting expelled from school from doing something so dangerous. Ida would also apologize, noting that it was only because of his foolish behavior that they had all nearly lost their lives. But still, he promised to do better, and that he would truly live up to the ideals of the hero Ingenium. He thanked them for their help before turning in to sleep for the evening. As Ida slept, everyone else in the room, after the pros had said their piece and had gone, there was still much that they needed to talk about. For one, T'Challa had a lot of explaining to do, Izuku and Shang-Chi wanting to now hear the full story. T'Challa would explain his powers, explaining that he was technically quirkless, so to speak, but that his power came from something known as the heart-shaped herb that had been grown in Wakanda, and that the title of the hero name that he had, the Black Panther, was one that had been passed down from generation to generation. The Black Panther was the hero and guardian of Wakanda, protecting its secrets from those who wished to do it harm. But there was also another responsibility of the Black Panther. As he held up his ring, the White Ring, he explained that the Black Panthers had always guarded this with their lives, and that after a while, Black Panthers had always learned how to use and channel the power of this ring, electromagnetism, along with their own abilities, the powers of the Black Panther. Now coming to know what they were all about, Izuku would also explain his situation, how his father was a guardian of the Power Ring, but had sadly been hunted down and killed by the Mandarin. Though thankfully, they did not get their hands on the Power Ring, and it was now in his possession. Shang revealing that he too was the guardian of the Fire Ring. They thought that their conversation was safe amongst themselves. That was until it was revealed that both Todoroki and Momo had been listening in. Ida, who was a bit sedated from the pain of his various injuries, actually was knocked out and didn't hear anything. But still, both Momo and Todoroki were surprised. It seemed as though the new and shocking revelations just never seemed to stop coming with them. Momo was more upset than anything else that Izuku didn't tell her about this a lot sooner. Izuku could see the hurt on her face, and he explained his reason for not saying anything. His father had been killed over the safety of this ring, as well as all of the Makuan rings. He didn't want to drag her into something that could potentially get her or her family killed, already noting the various dangers that his own family was under at all times. While she understood what he meant and knew that he didn't mean anything harmful by it, she was still a bit saddened, as she wished she could have known as well, as she wanted to be there for him and to help him, just like he had been for her. If she was going to get support in mastering One for All and battling against All for One in the future, then she wanted to be there for Izuku and the others, if and when the time came that they would have to fight against the Mandarin to protect the 10 rings. Todoroki also staked his life in the matter. He wanted to help them in any way that he could too, to fight against either All for One or the Mandarin, both forces of evil who could potentially take over the world if not put in check a lot sooner. The children knew that from then on, they were going to be working together a lot closer than before. As such, they had one ring in their possession. As they looked towards Todoroki, the fire and ice user, they would give him the ice ring, asking if he would be its guardian. And Todoroki would accept, noting that he would master this power. As such, they now had 4 rings in their possession. Izuku, the power ring, Shang-Chi, the fire ring, T'Challa, the electromagnetic ring, and Todoroki, the ice ring. That was 4 down, and 6 more to go. There was still the threat of the Mandarin, knowing that he would turn his attention to them soon. But they knew that as long as they trained, and as they stood together, they would be able to overcome anything, working as one. In the meantime, though, the work studies would eventually come to an end. As they did, Momo would tell Izuku to tell the others of what was going on, the ones who shared in All Might's secret, as well as All Might. After all, he trusted in them, so it was only right that they show that same trust. After thinking it over, Izuku and Shang-Chi decided that it would be for the best. That's why after school, at their request, they would have All Might stay in his office as they called the others to meet them. Izuku and Shang and T'Challa would take a deep breath as they walked in to see All Might, Momo, Bakugo, Kirishima, and Todoroki already there. Bakugo asked what was going on and what was so important that they all needed to be called here. He also asked why T'Challa was here of all people, and Izuku took a deep breath. As he held up his hand, they all saw the ring that he normally wore. Shang-Chi held up his ring as well, along with T'Challa, as well as Todoroki. All Might asked what was so important about these rings. They all looked at each other before they turned to All Might and asked, "Have you heard of the Mandarin?" This concludes What If Deku Was Iron Man? My Hero Academia Armored Adventures, Part 5. As always, if you're a fan of today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcasting that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we are going to be continuing What If Bel Crenel Was Thor? Don Machi, The Last King, Season 1, Part 2. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.